Hi, I'm Laura Rich Creek with Laura's Voice, and this is Laura Reads Foxed Books. Thanks for joining me. I am so glad you're here. Wow. Episode 7, Chapter 9. I feel like this should still be the week before I posted the first chapter. But here we are, and our narrator and Elizabeth Dale, she of the tiny head, rose-covered hat, dainty ankles, and country ways, take a walk one evening, and it changes something for Elizabeth. Of course, I know the end of the story, but I'm curious what you may think at this juncture. Please leave a comment and let me know. But you won't have anything to think about if we don't get started. Oh, and do check out the enrichment notes in the episode description. Now, without further ado, Chapter 9 of The Old Gentleman of the Blackstock. Chapter 9. The Carved Heart. I did not see old Mr. Miles to tell him that I had discovered his young benefactress, for youth is forgetful in the sunshine of prosperity, and I did not call on him immediately. One afternoon, as I passed along his street, he was sitting out on the seat under the old beech tree, all muffled up in his overcoat. But I was going to pay a call on Witchencheat, and was in something of a hurry, so did not stop. And when I was thinking of getting ready to call on him some time afterward, William Kemp told me he had left town for the summer. I did not think of him again for a long time. My thoughts were so occupied, for I was not the only person that stayed in town that summer. Miss Elizabeth Dale was there also, and though she went off once, to my great discontent, to visit some relatives in the country for a few weeks, she was in the city most of the summer. It was astonishing how completely her absence depopulated the town, and how equally her presence filled it. I heard other men speak of the city being deserted, but after she returned, I did not find it so. I do not think that I ever thought of being in love with her as a practical matter. I never dreamed of the possibility of her being in love with me. She was far too beautiful and too popular ever to think of a poor young lawyer like myself. In fact, marriage was something on which I might dream, but I had never seriously contemplated it. I thought I should marry some day, as I thought I should die some day, but I certainly had never thought as yet of marrying Elizabeth Dale. My dream then was rather of an heiress and a large mansion, as it had formerly been of a princess and a palace. And meantime I lived in the third floor of a small boarding-house, and never dreamed that Elizabeth Dale would think of me for a minute. As far as I went was timorously to send her flowers, or worship her beauty, and hate furiously every man who had the impertinence to look at her. But summer is a dangerous time in a southern city. The true life of the South comes out only in summer. Then it flowers. Then the verandas become drawing-rooms, and receptions are held on the front steps. It is one of the reasons why life in a southern city is easier than in a northern one. It is no groundless superstition that gives the moon a power to affect the mind. The providence that tempers the wind to the shorn lamb made the summer for the portionless girl. Given soft white raiment and the moonlight of a summer night, the summer girl need ask no favors of her satin-clad winter sister. How I blessed that summer for the ease with which I met Elizabeth Dale. If I used to see her almost every evening, stroll with her on the shady streets, row on the placid river, read to her, think of her, and plan for her a great deal more than I did of my practice, which of late had really grown, as was quite fortunate for the little florist at the corner above me, though it was still far below the large and lucrative business which was to be my stepping-stone to the Chief Justiceship. It was only as of a beautiful being whose mere smile was more than all other rewards, and all that I dared aspire to. It was enough for me to live in the same town with her. As will be seen then, I was not at this time in love with Miss Elizabeth Dale. I only admired her, and hated those who were. Almost the only time I thought of old Mr. Miles that summer was one evening when Elizabeth Dale and I were strolling through the old street on which his house stood. She was arrayed in a simple white dress, as angels and young girls should be, and she carried a large pink rose, which I had selected with some care for her at my little florist's. I had hoped that she would wear the rose, but she did not. She only carried it in her hand. As we passed slowly along, exchanging the pleasant trivialities which two young people deal in such cases, the old yard stretching back looked cool and inviting under its big trees. The seat under the old beech looked convenient and sequestered, and an air of quietude and calm seemed to rest on everything. I suggested going in, which surprised her, but I told her the owner was a friend of mine, and was absent from the city, and then informed her that he was the old gentleman whose hat she had picked up in the street. The gate was tied up, and I was about to cut the fastening when she said she would climb over it, which she did, with my aid, with the agility of a fawn. She must have seen the look of surprised admiration on my telltale face, for she said, with mounting color in her cheeks, "Country training. I fear I never shall get used to city ways." "Heaven forbid," I said. We wandered about for a while, and then came to a stop under the old beech, which showed on its gray, scarred trunk the rough traces of many a schoolboy's pride, or lover's devotion. As we looked at it, she gently stuck my rose in her dress. Most of the carving on the trunk was old, for few entered that secluded yard of late, and much was indecipherable. One pair of broad initials, high up, enclosed in a large heart, I made out as B.M. and E.G., but my companion did not entirely agree with me. The B.M. she thought I was probably correct about, but as to the E.G. I was only possibly so. "Those letters would stand for my mother," she said softly, "only she was always Betsy." "Or they might stand for example," said I, with the light wit of a young man. "Now, if I just cut D after that and changed the B.M., it would be all right. I should have followed the example." "Why, it would be like sacrilege," she said, her large eyes resting on the tracing above us. "Whoever they were, no doubt, two lovers, and that old scar may be the only trace left of them on earth." I wished, as I glanced at her, I could have caused the look in her eyes as they rested on those relics of that far-off romance. I do not know whether it was that our conversation began to grow a little too grave after that, but she suddenly decided that we had better be going home, and notwithstanding my protests, she rose and started. This was the only time she went with me into the old yard, though I often pressed her to go again, and it was the only time I remember that we ever spoke of old Mr. Miles. I mentioned to William Kemp that I had visited the grounds, as he was in some sort their custodian. "Yes, sir, I see you," he said. "Just make yourself at home." This was all he said, but it suddenly made me feel as if William were my confidant. End of Chapter 9. This has been The Old Gentleman of the Blackstock by Thomas Nelson Page, illustrated by Howard Chandler Christie. This book is in the public domain. Original copyright is 1897. This edition, copyright 1901. Production copyright 2025 by Laura E. Richcreek. Thanks for being here. See you next week.